My mother-in-law and sister-in-law tried to take my parents' house away from me. When I asked everyone to leave the house, my husband hit me. I couldn't take it anymore, so I revealed the truth. My story began with a call from my brother, who had recently taken over the family business after our parents retired. They had moved to Antelope Valley, California, to enjoy their retirement among mountains and nature, leaving the business in capable hands. During our phone conversation, my brother made me a proposal that would change our lives. "Why don't you go back to our childhood home?" he said. "You know, Mom and Dad aren't there anymore, and I would like someone in the family to enjoy it. Plus, it's close to everything." Enthusiastically, he suggested the idea, which took me by surprise, but made sense. The house where I grew up was in a prime location, just minutes from train stations, hospitals, schools, and shopping centers. Everything a young family could want. "Jack, what do you think if we moved to my old house?" My brother insisted it would be perfect for us, especially now that we want to have more children. I told my husband that night, trying to gauge his reaction. Jack, who had always been practical and supported the idea of being close to good schools and hospitals, nodded with a smile. "I think it's an excellent idea, Stella," he said. "Your brother is right. It's the ideal place to raise our children, plus we will save a lot on rent and other expenses," he responded, looking at me with eyes full of hope and shared projects. Determined and excited, we began preparations for the move. We packed souvenirs, toys of our little son, and everything we needed to start over. In the house that had seen generations grow up, my heart was filled with nostalgia and joy. At the same time, it was a return to my roots and a new beginning for our family. A week later, we stood in front of my childhood home. The garden needed care, and the paint on the facade was peeling, but nothing we couldn't handle. Jack put his arm over my shoulder and whispered, "Let's make this place a wonderful home again," while exploring them. Each corner had a story, from the mark on the bathroom door that measured my height every year, to the old hammock in the garden where my father used to tell me stories under the stars. "Well, do you like how your old room turned out?" Jack took me out of my thoughts as he came in with a box marked toys. "I love it, but there is a lot to do. We are going to start this new stage together and make this house as special for our son as it was for me," I responded with an excited smile for all the happy moments that I knew would come. So, with promises of a future full of laughter, learning, and love, we began to arrange our things, ready to write new chapters in the house that would now be our home. It was a return to my origins, with the promise of new beginnings and the assurance that no matter what fate separated us, we would be in it together, expanding our family and strengthening our ties. It wasn't long after we moved that my mother-in-law's visits became more frequent. At first, they seemed innocent, with the excuse of wanting to help us get settled or simply coming to check on her son, Jack. However, her true nature soon began to be revealed. The intention behind these visits was something that I found increasingly uncomfortable and sincerely inappropriate. One day, while we were having coffee in the kitchen, my mother-in-law, with a smile that was intended to be casual, began to speak. "Well, Stella, how are things going with the house? It's a big burden, except not having to pay rent, right?" she asked, trying to sound out the situation. "Yes, it's a huge help for us," I responded, trying to keep the conversation in safe territory. Not satisfied with my vague answer, my mother-in-law decided to be more direct. "I imagine your parents must have enough savings and property? I don't mean after so many years running their business." I was uncomfortable with this line of questioning, but I tried to answer with diplomacy. "Well, we never really talk about those issues. We are more focused on enjoying our time together now that they are retired." But she insisted. "But, Stella, you have to be aware of these things. You know, when your parents are gone, someone has to manage their assets. It would be better if you were prepared for each question." My patience was wearing out more and more. I tried to change the subject several times, talking about trivial things like the weather or asking about other family members, but she always found a way to return to the topic of money and inheritance. One afternoon, when my mother-in-law's visit coincided with Jack's at home, the situation escalated. We were in the living room when she started anew with her not-so-subtle interrogation. "Jack, it's important to think about these things. It's not only out of interest, but to be prepared." Jack, who generally preferred to avoid conflicts, only offered an evasive answer. "Mom, Stella already has enough adapting to the new house. It's not time to worry about that." But my mother-in-law didn't stop. "No, it's not a matter of worrying now, but you have to be informed. Stella, have your parents told you something about their plans? Do you know how much it would correspond to you?" I finally got rid of her insinuations and questions. I raised my voice more than usual. "Look, I really don't think this is the time or the place to discuss these issues. The important thing now is that we are together and, well, please, let's respect that." My mother-in-law looked at me, surprised by my firmness, and for a moment, she seemed to recede. However, the tension remained palpable in the air. Jack intervened to smooth things over. "Come on, Mom, let's talk about something else. You've seen the garden and how we arranged it." After that day, my mother-in-law's visits became less frequent, but each meeting carried an air of awkwardness that I hadn't known before. I was afraid that the greed underlying her questions could end up affecting our family relationship. With each visit, I mentally prepared myself to deflect dangerous conversations by staying calm but firm in my answers, protecting not only my peace, but also the harmony of our new home. One morning, like any other, I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when I heard the insistent sound of the doorbell. I thought maybe it was a neighbor or someone who needed help, but I never imagined what I would find when I opened the door. There they were, my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family, with suitcases, boxes, and even a moving team behind them, ready to settle in our house. "Good morning, Stella. I hope you don't mind. We have decided that we will move here with you and Jack," my mother-in-law announced with a smile, as if the idea of invading our privacy was the most normal thing in the world. At first, I couldn't process what I was hearing. "How are they moving here? Does Jack know anything about this?" I asked, completely bewildered. "Oh, we didn't want to bother you with the details ahead of time. Besides, it's a big house. So big, I'm sure you won't notice the difference." My brother-in-law intervened. As I began to direct the moving men to bring in the boxes, I tried to stay calm and looked for Jack. He came out of our room when he heard the commotion. His reaction was what bothered me the most. It was a simple raising of the shoulders and a, "What's the problem with my family living with us, Stella?" "There's space," he said, showing an apathy that I didn't expect from him. "Jack, this is our house, our personal space. You can't just decide this without consulting me," I responded, trying to find some sign of support in his eyes. While we argued, my mother-in-law and the rest of the family didn't waste any time. "We're going to fix our things in those free rooms. We won't mind living with you, and, as we said, we have no intention of paying rent or utilities," said my sister-in-law with total impudence. The situation was escalating, and my frustration was growing. "This is not a hotel, and you have no right to simply settle here as if it were your home," I exclaimed, but my protest seemed to fall on deaf ears. Jack, avoiding the conflict, only managed to say, "Stella, please. They are my family. We should help them while they find a place of their own. It won't be for long." "No, Jack, it's not fair, and you know it. This is something we should have decided together," replays in the minds of my mother-in-law and Jack. The invasion of my home by Jack's family came in a matter of hours, Boxes, suitcases, and furniture belonging to my brothers-in-law began to fill the free rooms, and with each object that entered, a piece of our privacy evaporated. "Let's go, Stella. Let's be a big family, happy," said my mother-in-law, trying to soften the situation with a tone that was intended to be conciliatory, but her words sounded empty in a home that no longer felt like my own. Jack's apathy in the face of all this left me not only disconcerted, but also deeply upset and sad. My home, our sanctuary, had been invaded without my consent, and the person I had hoped would be on my side, my husband, had allowed it to happen. This unexpected morning marked the beginning of a tumultuous period in our family life, a period that would test our relationship and my tolerance for the family that, without a doubt, I had crossed a limit. The situation at home had become unsustainable. Every day, my brother-in-law's family invaded more spaces, spreading their belongings throughout the house as if it were theirs. Not only had they taken the free rooms, but they began to redistribute furniture, change the decoration to their taste, and impose their rules in the common areas. All this without contributing a cent to the expenses of the house. One day, while I was preparing lunch in the kitchen, my mother-in-law came in without knocking, something that had already become a habit for her. Her presence was overwhelming and her manners invasive, but what happened that afternoon was the last straw. "Stella, we need to talk about how you manage the house. This is also our home now, and you have to consider our opinions," she began to say with an authoritative tone that immediately set off my alert. "Listen to this. It's not our home, in the terms you are using. Jack and I have allowed you to stay here temporarily, but that does not give you the right to make decisions for us," I responded, trying to remain calm but firm in my words. Her face hardened, her eyes narrowed, and her voice became sharper. "Stella, don't be insolent. I'm trying to make this coexistence work, but it's difficult with your selfish attitude." The air between us sparked with tension. I got closer to her with each step. My heart became stronger, not from fear, but from a controlled fury. "My selfish attitude? It's you and your family who have invaded my privacy, who have messed up my home, and on top of that, they demand that I adapt to you. This is unacceptable, and I will not tolerate it anymore," I declared. That was when it happened. In a quick movement full of anger, my mother-in-law raised her hand and slapped me. The impact was so surprising that for a moment I could only stay there with my hand on my cheek, feeling the burning of humiliation and betrayal. "I will not allow you to talk to me like that in this house. We are in charge now," she said with a voice that trembled between anger and determination. Jack, alerted by the noise, ran into the kitchen. When he saw my face pale from shock and his mother's hand still in the air, his expression changed from confusion to horror. "Mom, what have you done?" he exclaimed, looking from her to me repeatedly. "She provoked me. She spoke to me with disrespect." My mother-in-law defended herself, trying to justify her inexcusable behavior. Jack approached me. "Stella, are you fine?" His voice showed concern, but I knew that any consolation on his part would not change what happened. "No, Jack, I'm not okay. This can't go on like this," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "This is the last straw. Your mother can't stay here even another day after this." The incident marked a definitive breaking point. It had not only been an invasion of our privacy, but a direct assault on my dignity. Of course, we could not continue under the same roof, much less pretend that things could improve. The audacity of my mother-in-law, reflected in that slap, was a brutal awakening to the reality of our coexistence and the beginning of my resolution to put an end to this unsustainable situation. I had reached my limit. My mother-in-law's slap not only marked my cheek, but also the end of my tolerance towards the invasion and constant abuse by her family. I was not willing to endure even one more day in that situation. So with a heavy heart, but with a firm decision, I packed my belongings and sought temporary shelter in a nearby apartment. Before leaving, I called my brother and my father, who were already aware of the tension in my home. I explained to them what had happened, and their advice was unanimous and clear. Stella, you need to set a limit now. Cut off the services to the house. It is the only way for them to understand the seriousness of the situation. Following their advice, I contacted the basic services companies, electricity and water, and requested that they cut off the supply to my house. I knew that this act would be drastic and provoke a reaction, but it was necessary to regain some control over my life and my space. It wasn't long before the calls began. The first one was from Jack. His voice was a mix of confusion and frustration. Stella, why have they cut off the electricity and water? What is happening? Jack, I have decided to take some measures to make sure that they understand that what is happening in the house is unacceptable. I cannot continue living like this. My mother-in-law hit me. Jack, this has gone too far, I responded, my voice firm but full of emotions. But how are we going to live without services? This is extreme, Stella. You must reconsider. He tried to persuade me. Reconsider when your family has left the house. They cannot continue there as if nothing had happened. It is my home, and I need to respect that, I said sharply. The next call was from my mother-in-law, whose tone was a mixture of anger and desperation. Stella, this is ridiculous. You can't just leave us without basic services. We are a family. A family does not treat each other the way you treat me. I have tried, I have asked them to move, and you have ignored my requests. Cutting the services is my next step to ensure that you take my decisions seriously, I explained calmly, although each word was difficult for me. The calls continued, each one increasing in desperation and demands for restoration. I had to restore the services, however, each call only reaffirmed the necessity of my decision. It was clear that without drastic measures, the situation would never change. Living now in the apartment, I felt a temporary relief from the pressure and stress that I had endured. This space gave me the opportunity to think about my next steps and how to handle the possible return to my home, a home that needed to be mine again, free of the toxicity and control of those who were supposed to be my family. This drastic, although difficult decision was necessary. Not only was I defending my right to live in peace, but also setting a precedent that I would not tolerate abuse, no matter who it came from. The clarity of this period of loneliness strengthened me, preparing me for any future confrontation that might arise once I decided to face the situation head-on and completely reclaim my home. After cutting off the basic services of the house, tensions reached a climax. However, the desperate and chaotic reaction of Jack and his family only served to confirm that I had made the right decision. Determined to put an end to this invasion once and for all, I knew that my next step had to be final and legally binding. I contacted my lawyer, a competent and serious man who had been recommended by my father. I explained the entire situation in detail, from the initial invasion to the physical and emotional violence I had suffered. We needed to act accordingly, decisively. Stella, I am going to write an eviction notice for trespassing, and if they do not comply, we will proceed with a lawsuit, the lawyer explained clearly. Grateful for his efficiency, I gave my consent to proceed. The next day, the lawyer sent the formal notice to the house. The legal notice required Jack's family to vacate the property immediately, with the threat of legal action for trespass. Jack was the first to call after receiving the notice. What does this mean, Stella? An eviction notice? Are you really doing this? His voice was a mix of disbelief and panic. It is exactly what it sounds like, Jack. You and your family must leave my house. This has gone too far, and I will not tolerate any more abuse or invasions of my privacy, I responded firmly. But where are we going to go? Think about my mother. Think about you. You should have thought about your mother before you decided to invade the house. My parents left me. You had your chance to resolve this in another way. Now, I am taking legal action. I cut off her attempt at emotional manipulation. The pleas continued, this time with calls from my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law, each trying to appeal to my compassion or sense of family. But each call reinforced my resolve. Stella, please reconsider this. We are family. You don't have to come to this, my mother-in-law implored in a call. No, you crossed all possible limits. Family is not treated like that. I have already made my decision, and there is no turning back, I stated, with each response closing the door to any attempt at reconciliation. Finally, in the face of the imminent legal battle and social pressure from friends and other relatives who began to take sides, Jack's family saw the seriousness of the situation. They began to look for other places to live. They vacated the house within the period given by the legal notice, thus allowing me to claim my home once again. With the house finally free, I proceeded to change the locks and review all the damage that had been done. Then, with the help of my lawyer, I initiated divorce proceedings based on the improper and abusive conduct of Jack and his family, determined to close this painful chapter of my life and start over in peace and dignity. This step was not only necessary for my emotional and physical well-being, but also set a firm precedent for what I was willing to tolerate in my life. Finally, after Jack and his family vacated the house, I was able to breathe a sigh of relief and begin the process to regain my life and my peace. The divorce was not easy, but it was necessary to close a tumultuous chapter of my life and protect my emotional well-being. With the legal documents in process and with the support of my formal lawyer, the separation from Jack, despite his pleas and attempts to communicate with me, I decided to cut all contact. I changed my phone number, I blocked access to social networks and any other digital media. It is the best for both of us. Jack, we need to go our separate ways, I told him during our last conversation, trying to maintain my composure despite the sadness and frustration I felt. I know I have made mistakes, Stella, but there is no way to fix this. Jack was looking for some sign of reconsideration, but my decision was made. No, Jack, it is too late for that. I hope you find peace and that you can reflect on everything that has happened, I responded firmly, marking the end of our relationship. Once the divorce was finalized, I dedicated myself to renovating the house. I painted the walls with light colors and warm replacements that brought back memories of conflictive days. I decorated each corner in a way that reflected my personality and my tastes, something that had been overshadowed during the years of marriage. Each brushstroke and each new element in the house symbolized a step forward towards my recovery and independence. The neglected garden blossomed under my care, filling with colors and life, reflecting the renewal that I myself was experiencing. I enjoyed the tranquility of living alone, with the freedom to do and undo as I pleased, without having to deal with the impositions or disorder of others. The nights were mine to fill with books, music, and the peaceful silence that I had missed so much. This is a new beginning, Stella. You deserve it, I said to myself as I sat in my renovated living room, looking out the window as the sunset turned the sky gold. Eventually, I adopted a little cat, whom I called Sunshine. He became my faithful companion, following me around the house with curiosity and filling the spaces with his antics and purrs. Sunshine not only brought joy to my daily life, but also filled the house that once felt so gloomy and cold with life. In my personal sanctuary, rebuilt with effort and care, I found peace again. The days of intrusion and chaos were left behind, giving way to afternoons of serenity and mornings of renewed hope. Life on my own was everything I had imagined and more. a true testament to the strength and resilience I had forged through the adversities faced. Some months after the divorce, when I was already beginning to fully enjoy the tranquility of my independent life, I received a series of calls and messages that I did not expect. It was Jack trying to re-establish contact. I ignored the first calls, but he insisted. Finally, one afternoon, I decided to answer to make things clear. "Hello, Stella, how are you? We need to talk," Jack began with a voice that denoted concern. "Jack, everything was already said at the time. There is nothing more to talk about," I responded firmly, although a part of me was curious about the insistence of his calls. "No, please, listen to me. We are going through a very difficult situation. My mother is sick, and the economic situation has become very complicated. I lost my job." His voice broke as he spoke. Despite the compassion I naturally felt for anyone in difficulty, I remembered the reasons why I had decided to cut off all contact. "I am sorry for what you are going through, but as I told you before, your situation is a result of the decisions you made. We cannot have any type of relationship again. I hope you find a way to solve your problems," I said, trying to remain calm and compassionate. "Please, Stella, don't close the door on me. I need your help. Anything you can do," he insisted desperately. "Jack, it is no longer my responsibility to help you. You and your family made certain decisions, and now it is time to face the consequences. I wish you the best in finding solutions," I replied, remembering the pain and chaos that his presence had brought to my life. "But what about everything we lived? Does it mean nothing now?" he asked, seeking to appeal to nostalgia. "It meant something at the time, Jack, but the past cannot erase the damage. In fact, it's time to move on separately," I concluded, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. After that call, I blocked his number. I definitely knew that staying firm in my decision was crucial for my well-being. I couldn't allow myself to be dragged back into a cycle of negativity and problems that were not mine to solve. This last attempt at contact reinforced my resolution to stay away and continue building a life of peace and stability on my own. With each passing day, I felt more confident that I had made the right decision, focused on taking care of myself and protecting the sanctuary of peace I had created in what was once a shared home, full of tumult. The weeks and months that followed were a testament to my strength and renewed independence. I devoted myself to my hobbies, strengthened friendships I had neglected, and each new day confirmed that life could be beautiful and full even after periods of intense emotional storm. One night, months after Jack's last attempt at contact, I experienced one of the most tense and alarming moments since I had decided to live alone. It was around 11 p.m., and I was enjoying a book quietly in my living room when furious knocking sounded on the door. At first, I thought it could be a neighbor in trouble, but the insistent knocking became more aggressive. I cautiously approached the window to spy on who it could be. My heart stopped when I saw Jack accompanied by his brother and another man that I couldn't recognize, trying to force the lock on my door. "Stella, open the door. We just want to talk," Jack shouted, clearly upset and desperate. I knew I couldn't open the door quickly. I took my phone and called the police while they continued trying to get in. "They are trying to force their way into my house. Please, I need help immediately," I informed the operator, trying to stay calm. The police response was quick. While I waited, I took refuge in the bathroom, the safest place in the house. From there, I could hear Jack's screams, increasingly frustrated at not being able to get in. "We're not going to leave until you speak, Stella," he insisted. But before they could do more damage, the police sirens sounded in the street. The knocks stopped, and through the window, I saw 2 patrol cars parked in front of my house. the officers quickly got out and headed towards where Jack and his companion were with their hands up. "Stay away from the door," one of the police officers ordered. Jack tried to explain, but the officers were not interested in excuses. "You are detained for an attempted break-in," the officer informed them while they were handcuffed. The situation was not only terrifying but also revealing. The police took my statement, and the neighbors alerted by the noise appeared worried, some offering words of support. Jack's arrest was a hard blow for him, not only legally but also personally and professionally. The next day, the news of his arrest spread quickly. His employer, upon learning of the charges, decided to fire him, citing inappropriate behavior and legal concerns as the main reasons. Jack's reputation, already tarnished by the separation and our previous domestic problems, completely deteriorated. This incident exacerbated his financial difficulties. Without employment and now facing legal charges, Jack's life became even more complicated. On my part, the incident strengthened my resolve to stay away and tighten security in my home. I installed an improved security system and changed the locks for more robust ones. The tranquility and security of my home were my priority, and I was willing to do everything necessary to protect it, despite the turbulence. This experience reaffirmed my decision to have ended our relationship and close that chapter of my life definitively. After closing the door on a tumultuous stage of my life, I found myself in the calm of my home, surrounded by silence and serenity. The loneliness that I once feared was now my most precious companion in this personal sanctuary. I allowed myself to reflect on everything that happened, from the invasion of my space to the legal and emotional battle I had to fight to claim what was rightfully mine. One afternoon, while I was enjoying tea in my garden, my neighbor Marisol approached cautiously. Her presence reminded me that I was not alone in this, that there were people who cared and supported me. "How are you, Stella? I have been thinking about you a lot," Marisol said with a warmth that comforted me. "Thank you, Marisol. It has been a difficult period, but I am beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel," I responded, thanking her for her sincere concern. "It is admirable how you have handled everything. Not everyone would have the strength to face what you have faced," he commented, and his words echoed in my heart. "I had to do it," I said, looking towards the garden that had begun to bloom again. I learned that establishing boundaries is not just a matter of preference, but a vital necessity. We cannot allow others to dictate how we live in our own space, in our own life. Marisol felt deeply understanding my words. "It is a hard but valuable lesson, and look at this beautiful place that you have created. It is a refuge, a true home." His statement signified my belief that the decisions I had made in this process had not only been about reclaiming my home, but also about redefining my sense of self-worth and self-respect. I met greed and impudence, not with retaliation, but with determination and dignity, by demonstrating that firmness in the defense of our rights is crucial. I'm going to make sure that something like this never happens again. This home is my sanctuary, and I will protect it with everything I have, I said, more to myself than to Marisol, marking an unbreakable resolution. Marisol smiled at me, offering me his unconditional support before saying goodbye as he walked away. I was left thinking about the importance of community ties and mutual support in times of crisis. From then on, I decided to live my life with a greater awareness of my own limits and the importance of respecting them from others. I was determined not to allow anyone else to disturb the peace I had worked so hard to restore. This chapter of my life, although painful, taught me about resilience, inner strength, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who truly value and respect me. With the house finally alone for myself and my life organized again, I was ready to face the future with a new perspective, knowing that I had overcome one of the most difficult challenges that life had presented to me. If you like this story, please leave a like and comment, subscribe to the channel. This other video that appears on the screen will probably move you.